keeping up with this entire playlist that I have on this shooting, you're probably pretty much up to speed, because I have covered every time they have a new, I think I've got like 12 videos now in this playlist. So anytime we get new updates, I update. So this has a little bit, some new updates, because we have pictures now. And this is the director of the Department of Public Safety, Texas Rangers, Texas State Troopers, whatever you want to call them, the guys right around write tickets. He's the director, so he's the head guy. He gave a lot of the briefings. The things he says on this thing, man, pretty damning for the chief that released a statement through his lawyer. Now remember, this chief, Arredondo, went into hiding, got police protection because he was in fear of his safety because people were threatening him. Then he went into hiding. Then he got a lawyer. Then he had his lawyer release a statement saying he was a hero and he did everything perfect. Then he got on the city council because he was already elected, and he hired a private attorney to help suppress all video footage and body cams so it won't embarrass him. So this guy just has weasel written all over him. But this report that he reads, man, I want to see this full report because this has some pretty damning information. Here we go.
Senators, Stephen McCraw, Director of Texas Department of Public Safety. As Senator Gutierrez noted, it's been 28 days since the senseless massacre of 19 innocent children.
Okay, I don't like the way they keep using that term massacre because they're trying to make it into a gun issue. This is not a gun issue, people. This is a mental health. This is a failure to lock down a school. This is teachers not following. This is administrators not enforcing lockdown procedures. This is open border where this month alone in Texas, 250,000 people come across the border illegally. Guns, drugs, running. This school had been in lockdown 58 times before today because of illegals running from Border Patrol and being chased by near schools. So this is a much bigger problem than good people owning an AR-15, just like the police. Remember, it's an assault rifle when the police don't have it. When the police have it, it's a police rifle or a patrol rifle. So this word game and making it about the gun, I just wish these guys would stand up and say, this is not a freaking gun issue. Knock it off. This is an incompetent issue on Uvalde Police Department and this chief.
And their two teachers at Robb Elementary School. Much has been done, but much more needs to be done before this investigation is completed and presented to the district attorney, Christina Mitchell, for her review.
If they're referring the report to the district attorney, they could do charges. If he lied or obstructed, the DA could charge him. Now, I don't think they will, because this is, one, it would be a hard case to prove. Two, they'd have the Supreme Court ruling that says police have no duty to act. But who knows what was done? We're not being told. All the video so far is being hidden, and only a few people are being able to watch it.
However, we do know this. There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine massacre.
It was a complete failure, and it was because of cowardness. It was because of hiring practices. It was because of promoting people that shouldn't be promoted in the name of PC. And then when they get promoted, they can't do the job. And they couldn't do the job before because they were hired because of what bathroom they used or what we've lowered the standard. This is such a huge issue that nobody wants to address. It's just easier to point at the gun and blame legal, lawful gun owners. The problem.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject.
That's a good word he's using. Isolate, distract, and neutralize. Now they're saying neutralize. I say kill. A lot of politicians don't like to use the word kill for some reason. We got to use nice words when we're dealing with a piece of crap killing and slaughtering helpless kids. We have to use nice terms like neutralize. They needed to kill him. The only way you stop active shooters is to kill them. Period. Okay? I don't want to neutralize him. I want to kill him.
The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander.
Okay, I disagree with him here. Cops ignore orders all the time. They're told to back off a pursuit. They're told not to go in. They're told to terminate. Cops disobey orders all the time. Cops are always getting written up for disobeying policy. There is no excuse for any man to be out there with a gun and to say, I can't go in because so-and-so told me. I mean, most of the people in the hallway, there was 13 DPS people. They work for the Highway Patrol, the state police. They don't work for that chief. Now, technically, they may fall under his operational control because he's the on-scene commander, but they're under no... Do you think this guy would have disciplined any officer who said, Chief, you're full of shit. I'm not staying outside. I'm going in. Of course not. So giving these officers that waited a pass and telling them they were just following orders is total bullshit to me. Because I still believe, and they haven't said it or proven it yet, but I still believe the group that went in did exactly that. They were tired of waiting for this inept chief to make a decision. And he was an inept chief because he was hired and promoted because of other things besides qualifications.
They decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
Ouch! And that's so true. See, to me, officer safety is a cowardly term. Officer safety is used all the time to be cowards. I don't want to go in. I don't want to shoot. I don't want to risk. I don't want to get hurt. You know, a woman's getting raped. He might have a gun. Kids are getting killed. I don't have a shield. Officer safety is a big coward term. And cops use it like a sword. And they're all brave. And they want all their toys. And they want their big assault vehicles. And they want all their weapons. And they want all their cool trinkets and toys. But you know what? Everybody wants to be a SWAT team member till it comes down to doing SWAT team shit. And then they wait in the hallway.
The officers had weapons. The children had none. The officers had body armor. The children had none.
Sounds like he was listening to my video. I said that the first day. They were talking about Officer Tatum was saying they were outgunned and it wasn't fair and they had to wait. I call bull. And by the way, somebody who's talking to Tatum, whoever his source is, you need to let him know that he's an idiot for listening to his source. Because his source was lying, just like I said, when you have a source, if your source is lying and you're relying on that, then you're just as much of an idiot as your source. But I digress.
The officers had training. The subject had none.
Correct. Officers had training, guns, vests, bullets, numbers. They had every advantage you could give in any operational high-risk situation. They had every advantage. You had an untrained, young, inexperienced, single shooter. You had multiple officers with training, bulletproof vests, guns, shields, and those long, mean assault rifles. It's funny. When a cop has an assault rifle, it's very passive. It won't even go in. I guess they're yellow.
1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds. That's how long the children waited and the teachers waited in rooms 111 to be rescued. And while they waited, the on-scene commander waited for a radio and rifles. Then he waited for shields. Then he waited for SWAT. Lastly,
he did everything Officer Tatum wanted to do. Officer Tatum said he was a good guy and he did the right thing. I really wish Tate would come on and just bite the bullet and say, you know what? I got it wrong. I mean, it's kind of pathetic that, and I've said this before, people that connect with the blue line and that have the flags and that think everything, their whole identity is connected to being a good cop and supporting cops and never talking about cops, they're usually really weak in integrity because they're so insecure that they aren't even, secure enough to say, hey, I may be a cop, and I got no problem supporting good cops, but I ain't supporting bad cops. Bad cops make me look bad, make my profession look bad. That's a good cop. Being a good cop isn't blindly supporting bad cops and trying to cover for them and lie for them.
He waited for a key that was never needed.
And if you don't know that yet, the doors weren't locked. They weren't designed to be locked on the inside. And the chief, when he released a statement through his lawyer, pretty much a lying statement completely, he said he tried a whole ring full of keys, at least 50 keys or 100 keys. And they had to wait for the last key. And now it turns out they never even checked the doors or tried one key.
The post-Columbine doctrine is clear and compelling and unambiguous. Stop the killing, stop the dying. You can't do the former unless you can't do the latter unless you do the former. Certainly, some things were done well, and even very well. The teachers quickly implemented active shooter protocols.
Wow, I can't believe they're saying that. You got freaking doors unlocked and classrooms unlocked, and now you're saying they did good? Oh, this is where they lose credibility. If they just throw, and I got no problem throwing down his chief because I think he's a piece of shit, but I don't want him used as a scapegoat and everyone else to walk just because it's easy. That school screwed up. They were on lockdown 58 times because of illegals crossing the border and being chased through their city. They got laxed. No administrator was enforcing or disciplining people for violating lockdown standards. They got into a routine and they didn't lock the doors. This door didn't lock shit and the classroom doors didn't lock. I don't buy.
Prior to the subject gaining entry. In fact, one teacher was able to call 911 and report that before the subject entered the campus.
Yeah, because she was outside with the door open.
Law enforcement officers were able to evacuate hundreds of children in a safe and orderly manner.
Oh my God, this is where he's losing me. I mean, is that a fact? Did kids get evacuated? Yeah. But because the parents were held back, what about the officers that went in and got their own kids while other parents were held back and they were let through because they were officers? What about that evacuation? If he doesn't bring that up, see, this is where report loses credibility. You have to give the good and the bad if you want credibility. Otherwise, reasonable people, smart people, critical thinking people are going to know you're lying or covering up.
The district attorney, Christina Mitchell, and her staff led tireless efforts to take care of the victims and their families in the aftermath. And Senator Gutierrez talked a little about victim identification and victim notification.
You notice law enforcement agencies are always kissing ass on a district attorney. The reason why that is, the only one that can hold law enforcement accountable is a district attorney. He gets to decide any way he wants, whether he wants to charge a cop or not charge a cop. Very rarely do you see law enforcement standing up and fighting and bucking a DA. I got no problem with it. He wants to charge me. He's got to find a crime. I ain't doing nothing wrong. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to be scared of a DA that he's going to charge me with a crime and kiss his butt. So I don't know what the relationship is, but the DA did great. This is what people not in a career field doesn't understand, that the only people that hold judges and cops accountable is the DA. If he's not willing to charge judges, and dirty cops, he's a shit DA. And that's how the system falls apart.
That is always a priority after such a tragedy. Very difficult to do, and she did an outstanding job in trying to handle that situation, blending all the different resources from local, state, and federal agencies at the time.
This is what's called a pre-endorsement for your next run for election. This is why they do this shit.
Importantly, what I'd like to know that at the time of this death, or first of all, I'll go a little before I go to the timeline. I just want to cover one more thing, if you don't mind, is that with your permission, to quickly review some of the pre-attack events is what I'd like to do. I think it's important to note, plus, this is not just a DPS investigation and a Texas Ranger investigation. We've worked closely from the beginning with all federal agencies and all agencies on the scene. In particular, on the investigative side, the FBI has provided tremendous resources, hundreds of agents, covered leads throughout the country, throughout the world, and also enhanced the videos with technology capabilities that they have back in Quantico. Very important to do, to get to the facts, to see exactly what happened. Because one thing is witness statements, another thing is video and audio recordings, period. So we're grateful for them. We're also grateful for ATF in terms of the initial.
Oh my God, we got to kiss all the federal agencies. I ain't grateful for none of them. They can get the hell out. I don't think they ought to be working the damn case at all. If we want your help, we'll send you something. If they want to help them, they were on scene freaking before everybody else.
Phases as it relates to the firearms and weapons that were involved and ammunition. And their effort.
If they did such a great job, how did he have a prior arrest for making threats and he passed the background? How did they do such a great job? How did the FBI not catch the background check when he bought the guns legally and they passed him, even though he was arrested 4 years earlier for threatening to harm school? Oh, but they did a great job. See, he's losing credibility.
Efforts continue. In fact, we'll continue to use the FBI in this regard. There's more interviews to go. We got re-interviews to do. So again, we're not done at this point in time, and we won't be done until the district attorney is satisfied that the investigation is completed and we're satisfied that what we have is correct. I can tell you just a quick overview of the subject. At the time of his death, he was 18 years old, lived with his grandparents.
I want to know how many times he was shot and hit, how many rounds he fired, how many kids were shot, and how many times each child was shot. That's what I want to know. Because if you remember earlier reports, the cops had to walk through and work their way through the hallways with dead bodies and blood everywhere. And now that we see video, there wasn't one dead kid in the hallway anywhere. So this push the gun thing, he was killing everything in his path, is bullshit. I'm not saying it's bullshit they didn't kill a lot of kids. I'm saying that we had reports, and I wish I could find it. If somebody could find that, I'd appreciate it. You could clip it or copy it or, put it in a link in one of the comments. But I know I read cops had to wade through bodies and blood in the hallways just to get to the door. It was a horrific scene. It was very tough on the cops. This is when we were earlier, when the cops were outgunned and there wasn't enough and they needed backup and they were outgunned and the poor cops did such a great job and Tatum had an inside source. That's what I want to know.
On Diaz Street, which was 0.29 miles from Robb Elementary School. In fact, he attended Robb Elementary School 1 year, and that was fourth grade, in the very classroom that he was killed. He communicated extensively on several different social media platforms, including gaming platforms with individuals. And what's disturbing about this?
Gaming platforms. What games did he play? Here we go.
Some of the communications is that over the timeline, and you look at them, it's almost as if he's communicating with people that's, if not supportive of the school shooter community, if there's such a thing, but certainly empathetic and sympathetic, as if they support. Look, it's a good thing. You get notoriety, you get points for being a school shooter, and it's obviously disturbing. And as a result of that,
it's called freedom. I don't care if somebody supports or likes him. Lots of people support. One man's terrorist is another man's freaking freedom fighter. I don't care if people support him. Why didn't the FBI catch the background check? Because the guy had a prior arrest. We kept told that we had to have background checks for all lawful gun owners because we were going to stop this. And time again, people buy guns that shouldn't have been able to get them because background checks don't stop evil people. This is not a gun issue. It's a people issue and a law enforcement response issue.
There are several messages. If we go back and look and assess after the fact, what could we have done, law enforcement, to prevent this before even happening? And that was the call after Santa Fe.
You don't have to do anything. What can you do before? What about what you do when you're there? Having 19 officers, 13 of your troopers in the hallway with guns waiting while kids are getting killed. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about what we could have done before. This is where they're trying to push this red flag shit. If somebody could have called in, if somebody would have reported it. I'm telling you, people, every law that they come out is a way to get around the Constitution. Whether it's the Fourth Amendment to search and seizure, whether it's the First Amendment of free speech, or whether it's the Second Amendment of gun. They are finding ways to water down and dilute the Constitution because the Constitution restrains government. Government doesn't want to be restrained, and they don't want to be held accountable.
After Santa Fe, well, what can we do? Yes, we responded well, but what we can do to prevent it?
You didn't respond well. Showing up is not responding well. Okay, you got there. That's responding well?
And that was the focus, and it still is continued to focus. But we have yet to identify even one report to the school or to law enforcement that discussed animal cruelty, that discussed many things are described, a morose, suicidal, fatalistic loner who had sympathies with and been called a school shooter. He certainly took on the persona of a school shooter in dress and demeanor and over the last year. And people noted this, but yet it didn't get reported.
And if it would have got reported, what? We got a law now on how you can dress? We're going to have laws on whether if you dress in all black, you could be a school shooter and the cops can come take your guns, lock you up? What? That's bullshit.
So there's clearly we have and leverage also the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, which is very good. Experts that independently look at this and look at the shooter and ask the question, could we have intervened? If we'd have known, could we have done something? And the answer is almost overwhelmingly yes. So when you go back and look after the fact, there's always things that could have been done if we would have known. That's why it's so important that the public reports this. So important, even if it's suspicious. Give us a chance.
I disagree. Don't report to government. Look, if they're not going to do nothing afterwards, you really think they're going to do something before? We've had plenty of shooting incidents where people have called the cops and nothing was done. And you know what happens? Nothing. You know what happens? You get your name taken, you're in the system, they may interview you, you become a witness, and nothing happens. I disagree with reporting to cops. Law enforcement, government.
We certainly know that we arrested a 13 and 14-year-old in Uvalde for planning an attack on Uvalde High School back in 2018. And they were charged with attempted...
Okay, there's been a lot of talk if he was one of the guys that was arrested. I'm pretty sure he wasn't, and from the statement he just said, we arrested 2 different juveniles. If he said it was him, he would have said we arrested him, and he didn't.
Or conspiracy to commit capital murder. That's what right looks like because the public reported it, and it was investigated. And that's what right looks like. We know that, I mentioned a number of statements. Also, at least 8 months prior to the attack, he was moving towards on what they would call a pathway to violence. He'd asked if...
Oh, we've already got a term for it. Pathway to violence. Sounds like somebody going through the police academy.
Family member to purchase him a weapon. Refused. He was 17 years old at the time after he dropped out of high school on October 28th. Other messaging, other conversation. He also began buying things, and several purchases for rifles, accessories, specifically magazines. He didn't have a rifle, but he purchased magazines. He purchased slings. He purchased high-end optics, and he had money. He had money in a joint bank account, and I can't discuss some of the specifics.
Everyone's asking where the money came from. Now he says he has joint bank accounts. Now we know where he got the money. All the conspiracy guys that said the government set all this up and the FBI gave it to him. Somebody's going to post on the comments, Rick, maybe his joint account was with the FBI. Okay, whatever.
Issued through a grand jury subpoena. But he had money and a joint account with his grandmother and used a debit card to make those online purchases, several online purchases, at least 6, prior up until the day of the attack, or actually to the day of his birthday, May 16th. On May 16th, he was eligible to purchase a weapon. He purchased 2 5.56 millimeter rifles, one a higher end version of it. He purchased as many as 1,740 rounds through a online retailer and was able to purchase it. Was delivered to that residence at a later time. He purchased another 375 rounds of ammunition within that same couple of day period. We know that on May.
So now we know these questions have been asked over and over again. Where did he find all this ammo? How did he get it? He had a debit card, he had a joint account with his grandmother, and he ordered a lot of the stuff online. I don't have a problem with that. So what? It's America. He should be able to do that. Just because he's crazy does not mean we need to stop lawful people from doing things.
May 14th, he placed online, he messaged, make it very careful, messaged online on these social media platforms, various different ones, 10 more days. Someone responded, what are you going to do, shoot up a school? No, you'll see. Those types of things are those words are out there, but yet not reported 10 days before.
Reported. We're supposed to report every time somebody says something. I mean, if I accidentally say school shooting when I meant to say shooting range, you should report that. Everybody should report everything. Yeah, because we have so much law enforcement. Then you know what that does? That gives law enforcement a way to go, you know what? We've got too many reports. We need more law enforcement officers. We need more money. We need to raise taxes because we've got so many reports. Government ain't stupid. Government's final goal is always to grow government. Get more money and more people.
And of course, very disturbingly, many messages that occurred on the day of the attack on May 24th. And, to a number of different friends, some tell them delete your messages. Along those lines, you'll see what's going to happen. And he was in communication many times, in messaging and earlier FaceTime with a 15-year-old juvenile, and it was in Germany at the time, and told her, and I quote, I'm going to shoot my grandma in the head. And he later, I just shot my grandma in the head, and I'm going to go shoot up an elementary school. That was at 11:21.
Yeah, if we had like maybe 50 more laws, that would have stopped him. No. If we had 100 more laws, that would have stopped him. No. If we had 250 more laws, that would have stopped him. All these idiots calling for more laws. Laws don't stop crazy people, you freaking crazy idiots.
When that happened, 11:21. And with your permission, Chairman, I'd like to go to the timeline. And these events are taken from audio, video, body camera, 911 tapes.
This sounds like gonna be the best timeline. And I haven't watched this, so we'll see what happens.
Simply subject to transcription. And you have a copy of the timeline in front of you. And I'll begin on page 1. And I'm going to round off the times. I'm not going to say the seconds, but I'll do it in order. The suspect crashes his vehicle into a ditch. Okay, this was at the intersection of Goss and Gerardine, in front of the school and in front of a...
See, I still want to know when the first 911 call came in that a grandmother was shot and that they needed medical. I still have not heard that yet, because that's when this thing started. When government first knew is after grandma got shot, someone called 911. And we haven't heard that time yet.
A funeral home. The subject didn't have a driver's license. The subject couldn't drive. And when he did drive...
If we just had more laws, he probably wouldn't have drove. If we had 15 more driver's license laws, he wouldn't have drove. No, 50 more license laws, and then he wouldn't have drove. It's just stupid.
He was described as having problems with taking a turn. So people wonder, why, crashing like he did when he also attempted to turn, almost left, but then crashes into a ditch, a concrete ditch, and right in front of the school. If he's really going to the school to do something, what's his destination? Well, his destination was Robb Elementary School. There's no question about it. He did crash. Once he crashed, 2 males from the funeral home went out to see how he was. And at that point, that was 11:29. We heard a teacher. This teacher was inside the school, by the way. The teacher, was observant enough inside the school. She calls 911.
Oh, we heard that. Oh, she called 911 about the teacher that called in the shots fired, I think, was outside in the parking lot.
And reports a man with a gun. That was 11:29. 11:31, the suspect began shooting between, the suspect had shot at, the individuals that came from the funeral home. Now he left 3 rounds. He shot 3 times at him. Missed him. One of the individuals got up, and they continued on, and of course reported that later. 11:31, the suspect begins shooting at the school. And there's classrooms on the West Building. If we have the diagram on my left here, you can see this right here. So you can see the Diaz Street location, and you can see the west entrance. And if your permission, if I can stand up, Chairman.
Nobody's got a freaking laser pointer. I've been using a laser pointer when I'm teaching for freaking 20 years now. Nobody can give this guy a laser pointer. He can't just point the laser pointer at the damn picture and show him. Jesus
To
Christ.
be able to point that out? Okay, this is Diaz Street. Diaz Street's up here, 0.29 miles around. This is Goss Street. This is Jardine Street. This is the funeral home I talked about. This is where he crashed, right here. The crash location. He was trying to make the turn here and crashed. It was his grandmother's pickup truck that he crashed in. He climbed out on the passenger side and took with him one rifle. He took with him his backpack at that point. That's when he shot at, when I described the time he shot at those two individuals, ran back to the funeral home. Then he situates himself. He moves to a fence. The fence is approximately 4 feet, throws the bag over, jumps over the fence, and proceeds in this direction.
All this must be on a video if he knows he throws the bag over. That was a specific detail that you just don't make up. They must have video of him doing that or an eyewitness that saw him, but that's pretty kind of detail. He threw the bag over first, then he climbed over.
Red on your chart is the direction that the subject is moving. As he moves into this area,
I'm at 31 minutes. I'll make a part 2 on this one. We'll be right back.